Sir, 1966 through 70, you were enlisted. I am sure you had wonderful encounters with chaplains. You were in chapel as frequently as possible. Please share your encounters with chaplains, sir.
Well, I don't want to disappoint you, but the truth of the matter is, I didn't have any religious background. I had never met a minister or chaplain until I got the basic training. In basic, we were divided into groups according to what denomination you were. Well, I didn't have a religious denomination, no faith group. I wasn't Jewish or Catholic or Baptist or anything like that. And I thought, what in the world do I do? They're going to find out I'm an evil guy. I know I wasn't evil,
Right.
but I was always in fights and stuff, and I was doing everything. I was doing everything I could to keep from getting in a fight in basic training. I was just not looking anybody in the eye, just trying to be a good guy. But that time, I just cut in line. I didn't know. To this day, I don't know what line I went into, but it was a Protestant denomination, and I stayed in that line. And there were about 50 or 60 of us who went to that group, and there was a chaplain who got up to brief us. And personally, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was the most foul-mouthed guy I had ever met. He was deeply offensive. He was trying to probably act like an 18-year-old again.
Okay.
And I thought to myself, boy, I didn't know ministers were like that. And then I thought, well, he's not a real minister, he's a chaplain. I know better than that now, but I didn't then. You know, I was 18 years old, and I thought, whoa, what in the world's going on? And so I thought, I don't want anything to do with any of that stuff. And then 2 years later, after I got out of Syracuse and after I did a lot of training, I was in San Angelo, Texas, and again, I was learning frequencies and code words and things like that, getting ready to deploy to monitor Russian communications. And I just hit age 20, and I was trying to meet girls. And I was no good at it, no experience at it. Every time I tried, I fell all over myself. I tried parties, I tried bars, I tried every gathering I could, but I just didn't know how to meet a girl. And the thought came to me, Cecil, why don't you go to a church? Why don't you try a church? And in San Angelo, Texas, there's churches everywhere.
Yes.
And so I went off base and I saw this church, and I thought, well, okay, I'm going to try that. So I started going up the stairs. It was like probably 10, 12 stairs going up to the church front door. I was about halfway up or a third of the way up, and I thought to myself, oh, they probably charge at the door, like the movies. You pay $5, you get in. Because I didn't know how it worked. And so I came back down and I sneaked in the back of the church. I thought, I don't want to pay for the religion. I'm not religious. I'm just looking for girls. But anyway, I sat there and I was looking around, but not for very long. After a short while, I started listening to this old white-haired guy up front who was talking. He had been a missionary to India for many years, and he was retired. And he was talking about things that I'd never heard about. I recognized some of the vocabulary, but not very much of it. And basically he said, if your heart's not right and you want to get yourself right with God, step out of that pew and come down here and fall on your knees. I never would have guessed that I would do a thing like that. But I stood there, he had us standing, my hands on the front of the pews in front of me. And suddenly, boom, something happened to Cecil Richardson. And if I could explain it, I'd make Billy Graham look like a kindergarten preacher. But I couldn't explain it. I can just say I was there in that church on that day, 20 years old, hearing for the first time in my life the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I turned to this old lady beside me and I said something rough. I don't know what it was, but it's something like, get out of my way. And I went down the aisle and I fell on my knees. And then I realized I'm supposed to pray, but what do you say? I don't know how to pray. But all these people gathered around me, and they started praying for me. And then this one guy who was kind of a Bible college student or something, he put his arm around me while they were praying. And he said, Cecil, this is what you do. And then he kind of took me through a step of repenting for my sins and inviting the Lord into my life. And I got up and I walked out, and my life began to change. It's kind of funny in some ways. I went back to barracks and told the guys that I had been saved, and they started making fun of me. And remember, I was a fighter, and you know, they were, oh, what are you up to now, Richardson? So I punched one of them, and we got in a fight. You know, I'll show you I'm a Christian. And that's a true story. We were fighting in the barracks right afterwards, you know, because I wanted to show them I was a real Christian, and I was really angry. But the thing is, God in His grace, as you were saying earlier, so thankful. Within days, I was shipped overseas, and I went to Germany, then to Turkey, and before I left, I went out to one of these discount stores, and I bought a little Bible. It was Word Publishing Bible, and I didn't even look at it on the way from America to Germany. But then when I got on a plane in Germany and was flying to Turkey, was be my first intercept assignment, I started fiddling through the table of contents. And as I looked at it, I thought, this is what I need. This is what will change my life. This is what will keep me from growing up to be like so many others. And well, not to criticize my family, but I mean, I had some rough people in my family, prison, all kinds of stuff. And I thought, I really want to get into this. And so I made a promise. It was a foolish promise, but it was one of the best promises I ever made in my whole life. I promised the Lord that I would read the Bible every week for the entire time I was in Turkey. I was there somewhere between 12 and 15 months. I can't quite figure it out, but I did. I read it every single week. I would start on a Sunday. I'd read 150 chapters a day, and by Saturday night, I would finish the Bible. Then I would start it again. I would have to read it so fast that I am a fast reader anyway, but you read the Bible, you want to pause, and let it sink in. I didn't know about that. Nobody told me about that.
Right.
So I just blitzed it. Well, to this day, I thank God for that, because it gave me a real feel for the flow of the Bible and for what every book meant and said, but it immersed me, and it made me even more excited about my life. And so I was assigned to Turkey, and you asked me about chaplains, and that's where it came in. There were two chaplains there, Chaplain Robert Wade and Chaplain Alfred Meeks. I just remember that they were captains. I remember that they were wonderful guys, and I just really thought the world of them. I hung on every word they said. I took notes on their sermons, but the chapel wasn't my primary worship experience. Okay. When I signed into the base, I had to take a finance briefing, and there was this tech sergeant up there doing the briefing. Well, he was a joy package. I mean, I never met anybody like that. In fact, I just watched him, and I thought, wow. And so while everybody filed out with their travel vouchers, I went up to the tech sergeant, and I said, "Sir," remember I was a 2-striper and he was a 5-striper. I said, "Sir, before I left the States, I got saved. Do you know what saved is?" And he said, "Oh yes, I know what saved is." And it turned out he was a Church of God in Christ pastor.
Oh,
and he pastored the gospel service on Friday nights. And I told him that I just needed somebody to help me figure out what to do now, as I was still rough language and still playing poker a lot, all kinds of things that just, not evil, but they just weren't consistent with what I wanted to be.
Yes.
And he took me under his wing. And he, what we would call today, discipled me.
Yes.